Welcome to the final leg of our Moroccan journey. And a quick reminder, hold any comments and questions until the end of the presentation, which will last about 40 minutes. We're off on a memorable adventure. The three big cities we visited were interesting, exciting, and wonderful, but the towns and villages and out-of-the-way places were even more fascinating. Chefchaouen, also called Chouan, was our very favorite site in all of Morocco. Located in the Rif Mountains, it has a population of about 35,000 people. It was founded in 1491 and became a fortress to ward off the invading Portuguese. Against the backdrop of the Rif Mountains, it was a safe refuge for Jews fleeing the Inquisition. It became a thriving merchant route, and the Jews prospered. The Spanish seized the city in 1920, and the area became known as Spanish Morocco. As a result, the clothes are different and the language is different, with most people speaking Spanish, which made me very happy because I'm semi-fluent in the language. The women don't wear jalabas, but they are equally covered with long skirts, long sleeve blouses, a shawl around their waists and over their hips, and a funny small sombrero with different colored pom-poms around the rim. When we arrived in Chefchaouen, our van stopped in a small square and porters disappeared with our luggage. We schlepped the rest of the way for about a half mile up a narrow, winding cobblestone street to our riad. It's obvious that Morocco is non-ADA compliant. Our room was large and airy with a comfortable alcove for reading and relaxing. On the third floor was a balcony overlooking the city. We could have reserved the swimming pool just for the six of us for 1 hour. Because it was an indoor infinity pool with very little drainage, we created a flood spilling into the lobby. We tried using our towels to mop it up, but that didn't work, and we finally had to go to the front desk, apologizing profusely. It turned out to be a no never mind because the receptionist told us that it happened all the time. Chefchaouen has been described as Jewish and bluish. Jewish because of its history, bluish because all the buildings are an incredible shade of blue, sky blue, cerulean blue, turquoise, dazzling bright blues. Originally whitewashed, there are various theories as to why they are now painted blue. Some people believe that the Spanish Jews fleeing the Inquisition in the 15th century brought with them a tradition of painting buildings blue because it reminded them of the sky and the presence of God. Locals say the blue buildings were originally only found in the Mela, the Jewish section. A different version of the story also attributes the blue to the Jewish community, but this time to Jews arriving in Morocco fleeing Hitler. A third, a radically different version, says that the buildings were painted blue in an effort to repel mosquitoes and for a cooling effect. I'm going with theory number one, that it was brought by the Jews fleeing the Inquisition. Chefchaouen was a shopper's paradise. The salesmen, and they were all men throughout Morocco, we did not see any saleswomen. They were easygoing and bargained in a low-key fun way, even flirting with old ladies like me. This is a common scene all over Morocco. The men sit around all day, smoking, gossiping, and drinking tea, while the women work. Every morning, women bring their bread to be baked in communal wood-burning ovens. A river flows down from the mountains, supplying fresh water for the town. It is a gathering place for children to swim, for women to wash clothes and even large carpets, and for the men to just be idle. It is absolutely forbidden to take pictures of the women, but we took many of the adorable children jumping into a shallow mountain pool, and snuck one of the women from the top of a bridge. For dinner, our guide Yusuf led us down a narrow, dark alley, through a stuffy, closed-in room, up tiny stairs. I would never have picked the restaurant on my own, but what a surprise. At the top was a veranda with Moroccan seating overlooking the city, which glows in a magical light at night. The owner was a friend of Yusuf's, and we had a feast. My favorite dish was wild mushrooms, hand-picked that morning and cooked in garlic and onion. I thought I was going to die of mushroom poisoning, but obviously I did survive. Yusuf gave Grant a special dish to increase his strength. In the picture, he is whispering to Grant that what he just ate was sheep's penis and maybe testicles. On a more spiritual level, as we enjoyed our dinner, we heard the call to prayer. And finally, another food famous in the mountains around Chefchaouen is keef. As we know it, pot, weed, marijuana. We couldn't find a store open, so we continued on our journey. One of the earliest written signs of a Jewish presence in Morocco can be found in the Roman ruins at Volubilis, a remarkably well-preserved UNESCO archaeological site, the largest Roman ruin in Africa. It was developed in the 3rd century BCE as a Phoenician and later as a Carthaginian settlement. Under the Romans in the 1st century CE, it developed rapidly. Among the mosaics, columns, and building ruins, archaeologists discovered a tombstone with Hebrew lettering. As we entered the complex, the gravestone was one of the first items on display. At the time, we didn't know its significance, but we were excited to see the Hebrew writing. There were nests of storks everywhere. Our guide would be trying to tell us something, and we'd be off watching the storks instead. Now he will be joining me on a 9-hour trek through the Atlas Mountains. But we will not see any synagogues or Jewish cemeteries along the way. So why are we going if our goal is to find Jewish Morocco? 2 reasons. We're on our way to the Sahara Desert, where there are many remains of settlements of Jews. But more importantly, it was in the Atlas Mountains that Jews and Berbers lived side by side for hundreds, even thousands of years. The Jews no longer are there, but you will see how the Berbers live today. We began in the lower Atlas Mountains, a fertile area with peach, orange, apricot, and cherry trees. When we were there, cherries were in season. Yusuf bought a bag at a fruit stand. We thought we were going to get a taste of delicious cherries, but they weren't for us. Yusuf had bought them for the Barbary macaques who are native to the Atlas Mountains. The name Barbary comes from our old friends, the Berbers. The alpha male grabbed the bag out of Yusuf's hands and refused to share the cherries with his harem. However, what's interesting is that macaque males take part in raising the young, which is unusual among monkeys. At the top of the lower Atlas is a high plateau with lots of scrub brush and cacti. The upper Atlas has high rock walls, many empty wadis, a large river flowing with some water, and canyons that look like the Grand Canyon. In fact, we visited the Grand Canyon of Morocco. All of this area is Berber. with some people still living in tents and some living on the sides of mountains. Amazingly, once again, a significant population of Jews live here because it was part of a major trade route in the 11th through 14th centuries. The women wash their clothes in a stream at the bottom of the mountain and then climb up much further to dry them on a hill. Debbie told the boys that they couldn't complain about helping with laundry ever again. The Berbers, who live in the Atlas Mountains, are a very private people. Although our guide is Berber, he told us that if he tried to approach them, they would run away. The illiteracy rate in Morocco is high because the Berber children living here only go to school up until the 5th grade. The concept of kasbahs originated in this area. Here they are small mud-walled cities with flat roofs that have crenellated tops like step pyramids. Some are in complete ruins, but many are inhabited. People live as they did centuries ago. We were able to walk through one to get a first-hand experience. Dating to the 14th century, the walls were made from mud and grass. The stone streets were narrow and shaded. The area is very conservative, and many of the women were completely covered by their jalabas with only slits for eyes. A charming lady with 5 children welcomed us into her home. From the outside, I thought it might be a place of squalor, but inside it was quite nice in almost a primitive way. The only modern touches were a refrigerator and a TV and a washer-dryer on the roof. We entered into a good-sized room with couches along the walls and a cupboard with lovely items on display. Behind the room was a small kitchen with fresh baked bread, which we got to sample. There was also a room for goats, a room for chickens, and a room for a donkey. The animals were fed by pushing feed through a hole in the roof. On the lower level was a well which supplied the water for the family. A boy Leo's age took us to the rooftop for a view of the whole Kasbah, which was on the outskirts of the city of Erfoud. Erfoud was a major Jewish hub in Morocco's largest Saharan oasis. Here, Jews financed the caravan trade with sub-Saharan Africa from the 8th century on and worked as merchants and artisans. They intermarried with the local Berbers, who often embraced the Jewish religion. In the 1950s, about 1/3 of this desert town was Jewish. All shops would close on Shabbat. There was a local Talmud Torah, Jewish day school, and a synagogue. Although I knew there had been Jews in the area, it was unreal to find a major cemetery on the edge of the Sahara Desert. A Muslim guardian lives on the premises with his family. In 1931, the Jewish population of Erfoud was about 1,200. Almost everyone left in 1968. The town was the home to many great rabbis and Kabbalists. Kabbalists? We entered a small building, supposedly the synagogue, with a large rectangular marble tomb and a picture of Rabbi Shmuel on the wall in front of it. We thought he looked a little bit like bin Laden. Rabbi Shmuel is part of a famous rabbinic dynasty, and Israelis come every year to make a pilgrimage to his tomb. Like the wall in Jerusalem, small pieces of paper with prayers were sticking out of the sides. 2 large visitor books were inscribed with writing, primarily in Hebrew script. We only saw one inscription in English and one in Spanish, which loosely translated to, "We are here to remember our Moroccan mishpacha." So many Israelis come every year to pay homage to the rabbi on the anniversary of his death that they help finance a large meeting hall and a new synagogue. If finding a Jewish cemetery on the edge of the Sahara was unreal, our actual stay in the desert was surreal. Grant led us on a large camel named Bob Marley because of his curly hair. I followed on a beautiful white camel. The sand dunes were covered with camel droppings called Sahara chocolates because they are tiny and look like candy. Going uphill was no problem, but when we went downhill, we had to lean way back and hold on for dear life. Dan, Grant, and Noah went crazy taking pictures. When Grant noticed our shadow, he told everyone to smile, which, like an idiot, I did. When you're in shadow, you can be cross-eyed and no one can tell. When we arrived at our destination, we disembarked from the ships of the desert and climbed up to the top of a sand dune. The sand, the color of cinnamon, was silky soft. What a spiritual experience. With the exception of a few clouds, it was a clear night. We sat at the top of a dune, watching the sunset over the Sahara, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. When we returned to our starting point, our luggage had been put in our rooms. We had our own compound with 5 tents, one for each twosome, a dining room, and a kitchen where they prepared an amazing meal. Musicians greeted us at the entrance, and soon all of us were dancing. We had a feast of typical Moroccan food. I starved in India, lived on rice in China, and ate peanut butter crackers in Vietnam, but I love Moroccan food. We always started with about a dozen different fresh salads, followed by couscous, tagine, which is chicken baked in a clay pot, and best of all, pastilla, a light crisp pastry covered in fried almonds, powdered sugar, and filled with chicken, saffron, and raisins. It was a crystal clear night. We could have slept under the stars, but a slight wind blew us inside. It was a perfect ending to an incredible day. Okay, so what's Jewish about our time in the Sahara? Well, I'll tell you. Jews were merchants who traveled the trade route through the desert in caravans. Who knows, maybe we were sleeping exactly where our ancestors had pitched their tents over 1,000 years ago. We spent the next night in Karzazat, which had a surprise for us. The Atlas, named for the mountains, movie company is the largest movie company in the world, and many well-known movies have been filmed there. Cleopatra, Black Hawk Down, Star Wars, Jewels of the Nile, just to name a few. While we were there, Ang Lee was making a film with Vin Diesel and Kristen Stewart, and the whole crew, but not the stars, were staying at our hotel. Tuyurir Kasbah, built in the 19th century, is a citadel set against the backdrop of the Atlas Mountains. This is one of the most impressive citadels in Morocco, with almost 300 rooms and a maze of passageways, steps, and key-lock doors. As far as fortifications are concerned in Morocco, this is one of the most impressive of its kind. It's easy to feel lost with this immense structure that only connects to the outside world through one narrow entrance doorway. The ceilings were made with colorful wooden beams. The walls were carved stucco and tile with intricate great work looking into the courtyard. Part of the building was the summer palace because it was cooler in the summer, and part, including a steam room, was the winter palace because it was warmer in winter. I could actually feel the difference. We learned that the cook was one of the most important people of the household staff because if you had a good cook, you had status. Many prominent people, including Winston Churchill, have stayed here. A short way out of town, we visited a Kasbah made famous because Lawrence of Arabia was filmed there. Small sandbags were placed at intervals across a shallow but rushing river. Young boys held our hands as we walked across. They all wanted big pens, but not having any with us, they had to settle for money. The Kasbah wound up and up through narrow stone streets. Shops were everywhere. Once again, the shopkeepers encouraged us to buy, but they weren't aggressive. I would have preferred quiet streets without the shops in order to absorb the incredible ambience of the place, but Yusuf said that the sellers had to make a living. Debbie bought a bowl, but I didn't make any purchases. But just wait, a little later on, someone made me an offer I couldn't refuse. We knew there had been Jews in, I have a hard time pronouncing it, Urzazart, as we were leaving. Grant found an antique store across the street from our hotel and came running to tell us that he had discovered all kinds of Jewish artifacts. When the owner saw we were interested in Judaica, he went to the back room and brought out an object wrapped in tissue paper saying, "This is a very special old Berber Jewish menorah." Although we own about 3 dozen menorahs, Dan and I loved it. It was also our anniversary, and I knew exactly what I wanted as a present. Now we own 3 dozen and 1 menorahs. With our beautiful menorah carefully packed away, we headed to our final destination. But on the way, we stopped to see an unusual sight: goats climbing trees. The area is famous for argan trees found nowhere else in the world. Early in the morning, goats climb up the trees, standing on the branches to eat the fruit. At the cooperative where we stopped, women made beauty products from the fruit. Sitting 3 to 4 in a row, they had an assembly line process, peeling the argan, grinding it by hand, distilling it. Working 4 hours a day, they take turns doing the different tasks. It is called a women's cooperative, but in reality, it is owned by a man, and the women do not share in the profits. However, they must make a good salary because Yusuf told us they use the money to buy houses, send their kids to good schools, and even to get braces. We actually saw one woman with braces on her teeth. The seaport of Essaouira has been occupied since prehistoric times. The Carthaginians established a trading post in the 5th century BCE. In the 1st century, a Berber king created a factory to make purple dye out of seashells to be used as stripes in Roman togas. The Portuguese came in the early 17th century and named the area Mogador, a term which is still used today. The name Essaouira comes from an Arabic word meaning walls, like in ramparts. In the Sahara, we had watched the sun go down over sand. In Essaouira, we sat on the ramparts to watch the sun set over the Atlantic Ocean. Of all the places we visited, Essaouira appeared to have the poorest people and many rundown areas. The Mellah was in a terrible state. At the end of the 19th century, there were 7,700 Jews in the Mellah and 700 in the Kasbah. At one point, there were more Jews than Arabs. It was the only Arab city in the world where Jews were not a minority. By 1948, the city had lost 98% of its Jewish population. Today, only a few remain. When we visited the Mellah, it was run down, abandoned, and dilapidated. We could see faded Jewish stars above many doors and plaques identifying what used to be a synagogue. However, today the Mellah is undergoing a restoration partly in thanks to King Muhammad VI. The Jewish cemetery, however, was in excellent condition. The oldest tombs dated from 1776. Like the cemetery in Fez, it was a sea of white tombstones, in this case made of marine sandstone, going down the hillside. The caretaker, a Muslim woman, of course, whose family had been caretakers for 4 generations, explained that the tombs with a rounded head at the top were tombs of women, the rounded part indicating their hair. The one picture on the left is the tomb of a man, and the 2 on the right are tombs of women. These shapes are most unusual, since Jewish tradition and law prohibit the use of human forms on graves. They are also unique in that on top they have poems containing information about the deceased and their families, and other inscriptions with riddles and codes. In the middle of the cemetery was a mausoleum dedicated to Rabbi Chaim Pinto, the most famous rabbi of Essaouira, who lived from 1748 to 1845. More than 1,500 Moroccan Jews come from around the world and gather every September at the grave of Rabbi Pinto. The annual 4-day celebration is called Hilula. The main purpose of Hilula is to pray for a good life and the resolution of problems. The pilgrims light candles, touch the memorial stone, and pray at the tomb of the saint. I read that it's a very joyous and not a mournful occasion. Nearby was Rabbi Pinto's home and synagogue. Although there is no longer a Jewish community in Essaouira, the building is an active synagogue used when pilgrims or Jewish tour groups visit the city. The synagogue is on the 2nd floor of a 3-story courtyard building inside the walls of the Mellah. It consists of a single large room and is maintained by a Muslim caretaker who shows visitors around. She is quick to hand men yarmulkes, kippahs, upon entering the sanctuary. Once again, we found a Muslim preserving Jewish tradition. There are 2 women's sections, one across the courtyard and one on the 3rd floor, both with windows looking into the sanctuary. One of the rooms was like a Moorish lounge with low couches all around, a good place to enjoy the high holy days. Essaouira is like the gift show of Morocco. So many wonderful, inexpensive products to buy. The Michaels bought out the town. I bought just one very special item. One of the few remaining Jews left in Essaouira, Joseph Sebag, owns an antique store. In his shop were hundreds of old items, many, if not most of them, Jewish. I was overwhelmed, so I asked him if he had anything special. He went into the back room and came out with a silver hamsa with a Jewish star and writing in both Arabic and Berber. It was the perfect souvenir from Morocco, representing the 3 cultures that had lived together in relative harmony for over 1,000 years. But my story doesn't end here. In January 2020, King Muhammad VI visited Essaouira to inaugurate the new Jewish Museum, only the 2nd Jewish museum in an Arab country. We visited the first one in Casablanca. The chief rabbi of Casablanca, Joseph Israel, and the chief rabbi of Essaouira, David Pinto, greeted the king when he visited the Salat Atiya prayer hall, one of the most emblematic synagogues of Morocco. Rabbi Israel praised the centuries-old coexistence between Muslims and Jews and recognized the king's support. The new museum's historical, cultural, and spiritual space hosts not only the synagogue, but also Beit Dakira, or the House of Memory, and the International Research Center on the History of Relations between Judaism and Islam. The King's senior advisor and president of the Essaouira Mogador Association, Andre Azoulay, expressed Moroccan Jews' gratitude to the king for his attachment to the heritage and culture of the Moroccan Jewish community. Quote, "This historic day bears the hallmark of our secular and millennial Morocco, which has known how to protect the great diversity which is the central wealth of our country." End quote. We have learned the history of the Jews of Morocco, visited the big cities of Casablanca, Fez, and Marrakesh, crossed the Atlas Mountains, stayed overnight in the desert, and ended at the sea. And so our Jewish journey through Morocco has come to an end in a city that seeks to preserve and enhance the Judeo-Moroccan memory of Essaouira as part of a Muslim king's ongoing effort to revive the country's Jewish heritage. It gives us hope. My thank yous. I have to thank my friend and neighbor, Leslie Kramer, who helped me with French translation. Oliver Hausman, who's part of the A-team at the temple and spent hours and hours and hours with me, both on nights and weekends when he shouldn't have been working, helped me with the technical part of the presentation. And most of all, my daughter, Debbie Michaels, who sat with me for every dress rehearsal, showed me how to do PowerPoint. I had never done it until this presentation, reminded me of things that I had forgotten, which I ended up including, and most of all, came over 3 Sundays in a row to help me set up. Thank you too to all of you who took the time on a Sunday morning to watch. I'm trying to end the slideshow. Deb, I need help.
Stop sharing, right? There you go.
Hi. Okay. Can you hear me? You can't hear me.
Yeah, no.
Oh, Roberta said yes.
Everybody's muted. There we go.
We can hear you, but we can't see your face yet.
That's okay. I don't look so good.
Yes, you do. Here, show everybody your face.
Debbie's going to show everybody my face.
Yeah, there you are.
Hi, here I am.
Yes.
Okay, any questions? Deborah.
I don't have a question. I have a comment. You have clearly loved your time in Morocco. Your photographs are amazing. I don't think I've ever seen blue that way, and looking down from the mountains and then out into the oceans. You capture both the intimacy and the panorama. And I just want to thank you for all your research. You typed all this stuff up. You had to go through your photographs. I'm sure it was a joyous endeavor for you as well. So thank you, thank you. To everybody else who is watching, I put it in the chat as well. Please consider making a small donation in Shirley's honor of appreciation, because we're not charging for our adult ed classes right now. And I think that we all learned a lot substantively, including that Shirley has a Hamsa with 3 different languages on it.
2.
That's just 2
2
languages and a Jewish star. So we learned a lot about you personally, and watching your grandkids be a little bit embarrassed, but the photographs of the family and everything were just wonderful. So thank you, Shirley, for all the work.
You're very welcome. Thank you for all that praise. Any questions? Robin asked where the Jews of Essaouira went, and
out and I said Israel and Europe. Is
Oh,
that correct?
yes. Some people asked where the Jews of Essaouira went. Most of them went to Israel. Some did go to the United States. Some went to Paris. And at this point, I think they rather live in Morocco with what's going on in Paris. And some went to Canada. But as I mentioned last time, there is a huge expat Moroccan population in Israel, and they are basically treated like second-class citizens in a lot of cases. Any other questions?
So they're treated as second-class citizens
Yeah.
because they are
Probably
darker
because
skinned?
they're different, yes. They look different. Their culture is different. They're not the Ashkenazi. And for all those reasons, they have been treated differently. I don't have an update right now, but I read a number of articles where they said they were not treated as other immigrants or as Israelis. So I can do an update on it, but there are no more presentations. So
I learned an interesting new word. It's called Ashkenormative. And I think it applies in America, and it also applies in Israel, where the white Eastern European Jew is considered the Jew,
yes,
and everybody else is different.
yes, that's probably true. Excuse me. Anybody else have Stan?
Yes. It just so happens I have some second cousins in Israel that we visited with the last name of Pinto.
Wow.
And
you know what?
Very nice people.
I
They're Orthodox in Ranana.
I think I left out a slide because I don't remember saying it, so I'll share it with you now. Just a minute. There are many followers of Pinto now throughout the world. And there are many synagogues, Pinto synagogues. There's even one in Los Angeles called the Pinto Synagogue on Pico Boulevard. And I think somehow I skipped that slide. So maybe you're related to him, Stan.
Yeah. They're very Orthodox. They had 7 kids, and were wonderful people to be with and really find out about.
But they weren't ultra-Orthodox.
Yeah, well, these...
So,
on the subject of Israel and treatment of different people, modernization of a Jewish state was mostly done through the power of the Ashkenazi Jews. And so when the other types of Jews came in, I think Ashkenazi Jews had only maybe heard of Sephardic Jews, and they lumped the Arabic Jews and the Sephardic Jews together, although they're kind of different. And anyway, I think there have been a lot of confusion about in Israeli government and culture about different cultures of Jews. And so they lumping everybody who isn't Ashkenazi into Sephardic really didn't work very well.
But
Obviously.
I think they're doing very well now, and I'm not so sure that they're discriminated against now. I think that was true many years ago, but I think all the Sephardic Jews are actually the majority right now in Israel are the majority, actually, compared to the Ashkenazi.
The Arabic Jews are the majority.
Arabic Sephardic.
So 1 out of 7 Israelis is a descendant of Iraqi Jews. And that doesn't even include all the other ones that were mentioned.
Yeah, I think the Moroccans are about 10% of the population. Anyway.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. Anything else? I want to...
Can we get copies?
This is going
Can we get copies of any of your photos?
You
I would love to get a picture. Some of that blue is just so intense.
It's really that blue. It really, really is. It is amazing. And it was our favorite place, I think, in all of Morocco. Noah and Leo loved it. We all loved it. I know a lot of tourists don't go there. It's a bit out of the way. But if you go to Morocco, do not miss Chefchaouen. It's a must. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, I can send you pictures, sure. I want to put in a little plug. I love doing this. Absolutely, it was so much fun. If you are interested in a presentation on the Jews of Lithuania, let my Temple Emanu-El know. I would be happy to do that. I have one person, Deborah, that I can see, but I've been there twice, and the story of Lithuanian Jews is really the story of all Eastern European Jews. So if you come from anywhere in the Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Poland, I think you might find it interesting, but I have to be asked by the synagogue if they want me to do it. So that's my little plug. Thank you.
Shirley.
Yes, Pauline.
Yeah, I appreciated having the recording because I missed it last Sunday. So will there be a recording of this one? I want to show it to my grandson.
Yes, it will be on YouTube in a few days. Wonderful Oliver edits it for me. Debbie recorded it. It's in iCloud right now, and the two of them will make sure that it's on YouTube.
Okay, great.
Probably
Thanks.
by
And
Wednesday.
thank you.
Probably by Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay. And
Hey, Cheryl.
yeah, Dan, that's my husband, if you don't know.
Interestingly, one of our Lithuanian cousins, Ella, is on this morning.
I know she's been on the whole
Yeah,
time.
well, I know. I just wanted to point that out to other people.
Yes, yes. If I do a presentation on Lithuania and the temple agrees to it, you will meet my wonderful cousins in Lithuania. I didn't know they existed until maybe 5 years ago, and we basically met on Jewish genealogy. Oh, which I can.
Shirley?
Yes.
Yes, this is Len Schreibstein.
Hi.
I'm on the Adult Education Committee,
I
and we would be quite interested in you doing a presentation on Lithuania. So I will be in touch with you so we can work
Okay.
out the details for some time in the future. And appreciate your offer, and also officially appreciate this fine presentation, the three sessions that you did. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. That means a lot. Okay. Then I will end the session with just one comment. Go Niners. Bye.
Bye.